Yeah, let's head back to our presentation from here. So, like, in the last exercise, you already got a feeling how JavaScript actually can work and how you can actually like set up your own JavaScript on your website if you want, for example. And now I would really like you to show some nice visualization stuff that you can do if you got a little bit more proficient in JavaScript, if you want to actually dig really into how to create nice and shiny things on the web. And the first thing I want to show to you is D3.js. And D3 is like a JavaScript library, like kind of like toolbox that you can use to actually do really, really nice visualizations using HTML, CSS, and also SVG, which is like kind of an image format. And it's really, really beautiful. You should totally have a look into that. Actually, we will that like just in a minute. And the principle of D3 is mostly based on that you, just plug it in into your website. You can get the code for like the whole library. Like it's similar like to a function.js file, right? You just like have like all the different functions, all the different tools that you actually need to make the visualizations in D3 already in this JavaScript file. You could see the JS, and you could just input it like with a script tag into your website. And after you did it, it's actually loaded into your web page, and you can use functions that are like inherent to D3. Like for example, in this line of code, you could see the select all function, which takes a parameter called p. And the only thing it actually does, the select all, is like actually looking at your page and selecting all of the p tags that you have there. So everything like with a minor bracket, then p minor bracket closed, and then we'll apply a new function and actually style it and give it like a color. So you don't have in all the p tags that you have selected with this line of code black text, but instead white text because you say color white. And this is like just a really simple example of what D3 is actually used for. There are a lot of other, whole list and array of different functions that make it easier for you right off the box to actually get started. And don't get hung up on stuff like, selecting, for example, canvas elements with different lines of code. So this makes it really easy for you to get started really, really soon with just creating nice stuff. So you think what I'm talking about actually, let's maybe see a demo. So if you use D3, you could, for example, build something like this. So this is not only a white web page. If you wait for a little bit of time, actually something should appear, so let's just be patient. And then you, for example, see something like this, like a really nice, smooth animation of a bar chart. What this example shows is like a visualization, like of all the top stories on reddit.com. It's like kind of a board on the forum if you're not familiar with that. And it also shows in this visualization not only how many of like the votes it got, like here in the white numbers, but also really nicely, if you hover over it, it gives you nice stuff like a tooltip that already shows you the title. And the nice thing about D3 is, like in plain JavaScript, you would like write a bunch of code just to actually select the element where you want to put it in, and then like doing like the height and the width of the bars and the color and everything. But with D3, you can actually like in a fairly tiny amount of code already do this nice stuff, and even with the super nice visualizations and animations when you reload the page. So this is what D3 is actually about, like really out-of-the-box functions to get you started really, really fast. And also, you can also have a look at the web page of them. They have like a whole bunch of area of different components here. You can just click on any of them, and then you see a really nice example of a component that's like ready to use. And oftentimes they even have like nice animations in it, which makes it like much more fun in your websites to actually make your users actually like love your website if you have implemented it so far. And there are like different other, you can just explore it a bit, like what you have here. I also have like another example here where you can like hover off the different chart styles. So this, for example, illustrates like different user transitions on a website, and then you can actually like get even tinier in your funnels and have just like nice shiny stuff. So this is like something that you can later on do with JavaScript. And I think this is like rather impressive just to see that if you get familiar with like a specific coding language and get a little bit more into it, you can create really impressive things where people go like, oh my, I would like to have that on my website. So this is like already for me now for the JavaScript part. And what happens next is actually Dennis would like to give you like a really nice demo of BioJS, which is also kind of a library of different JavaScript visualizations. But yeah, he'll tell you more about that. So thank you.
Okay, hello again. So as Jessica already said, now that we gave you like a basic intro into JavaScript, I'd like to show you what you can do if you get a little bit further into it. I'll tell you about BioJS first and what it is, and then I'll give you a little bit of a demo of what you can do with it. I'm going to go a bit faster because we're short on time this time. If you feel like a bit proficient in JavaScript already, feel free to try to stay along. You have the all the files I'm going to start out with in your folder already, but I'm going to do it a little bit faster. So first of all, what is BioJS? Most of us that were involved in this workshop actually are part of Burkhard Rost's lab. So we're all bioinformaticians, or we work in some way in bioinformatics or computational biology, which means we work with biological data and software and try to analyze biological data using software. And BioJS stands for BioJavaScript. And what it is basically, it's a component library for the visualization of biological data on the web. So it's all based on JavaScript. It's a bunch of different JavaScript code that you can use, and you can combine them, and you can extend them to create really beautiful visualizations and web applications for biological data. The whole idea behind it is that it's completely open source. Anyone can contribute. And if you see a component you like, you can just download it, put it in your website, and give it data, and it works. So that's where it kind of differs from D3. Many of the BioJS components are built using D3, and D3 is like a toolkit that gives you a number of options that you can use to build your own stuff with. While BioJS is a collection of out-of-the-box, like ready components you can just import into your website, give it data, and then they work. And just to look at some of the examples first. So for example, if you ever tried to visualize like the three-dimensional structure of a protein on anywhere, you used to need, what you used to do was you had to download some software, install it, download the data, and then you could maybe see it nicely. And if you wanted to do it online, you needed some annoying Java applet or plugin or something like that, Flash maybe. And now BioJS, for example, has a completely in JavaScript implemented tool for that you can just give it the data you have, and it'll visualize it really nicely. There's also things like multiple sequence alignments if you want to compare different genetic or protein sequences, and phylogenetic tree viewer if you want to compare the different organisms and their heritage. So there's loads of different stuff in there. And on the left you see an example that was built by a former TUM student who just recently did this as his master's thesis at the Ross lab. And it's called Vapor, and you can check it out on this address. And what he did was he created an application that lets you put in any gene sequence from a plant, and it will look for similar genes in Arabidopsis, that's the one down here, which is a very well-studied plant model organism. And then it will tell you if there are any known genes in that plant, and if there are any known resistances against certain parasites, how and where this protein might be expressed in the plant, and how it relates to other similar sequences. And these are all interactive and connected. So these are actually 4 different BioJS components put together in one website. So if you click onto one of the sequences here, all the other 3 will change according to which sequence you clicked, and the other way around as well. So you can select related sequences down here, and that will change this and this and this as well. So with a little bit of effort, you can find BioJS components that stick together really well and interact and make a bigger application than what you had before. And feel free to check out the registry, which is where we keep all the components. It's at biojs.io, and it's basically a big list of all the components we have. It's around 130 at the moment, and you can search them as well. So for example, if you are working with a biologist for some reason, and he gives you a bunch of expression data of some plant, you can just type in expression, and then select an expression-based visualization from the JavaScript components, one you like. If you click it, you'll get to a detail view, and that allows you to view the code on GitHub, download a compiled JavaScript file you can just include in your web page, or use the Node package manager to install the component as well, which is it's a package manager. It's a way to distribute Java code over the web, so you don't need to actually go to any website or download it. You can just type npm install whatever you want. And it also has a nice preview of what it looks like. Also check out our website, it's biojs.net, newly designed by Jessica, so it looks really cool now. This is what I'm going to do now. In a couple of lines, I'm going to try to show you what I can do. These are actually 2 different BioJS components. The top one is called the protein features viewer, and what it does, it shows you all the features, the interesting bits of a protein sequence. And this is actually done by Leila Garcia from the European Bioinformatics Institute in England, and this is going to be the new standard protein visualization of UniProt, which is like the biggest protein sequence database in the world. And so if you imagine this sequence down here being laid out on top, so with the first letter on the left and the last on the right, this protein features viewer will tell you, like, this is an interesting bit, this might be something where other proteins can interact, or this may be something that has a very high, that's a region where there are many mutations, which obviously can be really relevant for some diseases. And then we have a second separate BioJS component down here that will only display the sequence itself, so just the letters. And what we need to do in this case is we won't give him the sequence by hand. Instead, we'll get the sequence from this. So we'll access the first component, extract the data, and initialize the second component with that one. And that requires not too much coding, actually. Let me just go back to the folder we downloaded. And now we are already at folder number 5, because the slides that Jessica just showed you are in number 2. And to open them, you need to open the index.html, but we'll also upload those as PDF. The final result of the first exercise we did is in number 3. One of the examples is number 4, and now we're coming to number 5, which is the initial state in which I'm going to start developing this BioJS component. So if you take a closer look, I have 3 folders. In the imports folder, I have downloaded these 2 components from the BioJS registry, and then I also added some fonts and some CSS to make it look nice. If I would have used this package manager, I wouldn't have needed to do that, but to keep it simple, this is what I start out with. And I'm going to open that folder in WebStorm again. Number 5, here we go. So I have these 3 folders, but to make it a website, the first thing I need is to get an HTML file. I'm going to call it index.html. save it, and WebStorm already gives me all the skeleton that I need, all the things that I would have had to write by hand usually. So I'm going to give it a title, call it BioJS demo. Right. Then what I also will need to do is I will need to link the CSS file in my CSS folder. So I'll go link href css / main css. And I also need to tell it that it's a style sheet. One more thing I need to do is I need to give my components somewhere to sit. So I'll add 2 div elements. This is where these components are going to be. I'll give them an ID so they know where they want to be. ID features, and I'll call the second one sequence. Right. Now, one more thing I need to do, actually need to include the JavaScript so I can use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include these components I downloaded. Type need to right, and the second one as well. And now something important if you're starting out with JavaScript. If you import JavaScript files, which you will do a lot, the order in which you import them is important because they will get loaded one after the next. So I'm going to create a JavaScript file where I put my own code in a second. And that needs to go all the way on the bottom. Because I'm going to use the code that is in the upper 2 files. And for me to use that, they needed to be loaded before I can. So if you ever try out a beginner's JavaScript online course or something like that, and it looks perfect, and you can't find the difference between you and the example, but it just doesn't work, take a look if you have imported the JavaScript files in the right order. On the last line here, I added a new JavaScript file called demo.js, which doesn't exist yet, but I will add that any second. And what I will do there, I will grab these 2 HTML elements up here and inject these components into it. So for that, I'll create a new JavaScript file called demo.js. Kick out all the unnecessary stuff. And now I can use, because I imported it in the index.html, I can now use the code of these components. Because of the way that BioJS is set up, I can use what is more or less the JavaScript's import statement. So I create a new variable called feature viewer, and I go equals require, and then the name of the component. That is basically the same as you would, I don't know, import in Python, for example. Protein features viewer, and I'll do the same for the sequence viewer. I get sequence viewer equals require sequence viewer. Okay, and now I can use those. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create the actual feature viewer. So I'm going to go feature viewer instance because I need to create a local instance, and I do that by going new feature viewer brackets. So this tells you that this is a function. I'm calling the initializer function of this feature viewer component, and this also needs some options. So I'm going to give it a JavaScript object by going open curly braces and close curly braces, and in there I'm going to give it all the options it needs. So first of all, it needs an element to sit in. I called that element features before, so I'm going to just write features, which isn't going to work because JavaScript doesn't know what this features is supposed to be. So I will actually need to go and grab that features object from my HTML DOM. So I need to go into the HTML file and get it. So I'm going to create the variable features, and I'm going to fill it with whatever's in the HTML file. So I can go document, again document object model, get element by ID, which you've seen before and is provided by JavaScript. It's a built-in function. Quotes, and then the ID I gave it before in the HTML file. And now I actually have this DOM element, and I can pass it to this JavaScript component, and that will know I want to be inside of that element. Next thing we need to do, I need to also give it protein data. This component will download that automatically from Uniprot, but I need to give it an ID of what to do. And I'm going to go back to my browser for a second, and I'm going to go back on. I'm going to go on the actual uniprot.org website. This is what it looks like. It's the biggest protein database, as I said, and I'm going to select a protein. I can take anything, but I know that P53 is a very central protein that plays a role in many cancer types. So I'm just going to go and use that because I know that has lots of information to display. And I copied the ID up in front of here, and I'm going to paste it in here without anything else. And that's already enough to do this thing, I hope. Let's go back. And I'm going to go back to the code in a second. And I'm going to go and open the index.html in my file, in my browser. And there you go. Already there. And I can click around in that. It looks really nice. I can zoom. I can click and get the information of these different parts of the protein, regions of interaction with another protein. I know where there are different mutations, and some of those will cause cancer, for example, and that's very nicely displayed here. So we'll go back to the code. Now that we have that one, we want to instantiate the sequence viewer. If I just go here and do the same thing as for the first one and add the sequence viewer, that's not going to work because we need to get the sequence, so the data from the first component, and that needs to load it from the web before. So we need to wait until this one is actually ready and has all the data loaded. So I'm going to take advantage of another really cool feature that's very common in JavaScript, and that's events. So you can implement code in your JavaScript that enables your code to interact with other code via something that's called events. And we encourage anyone developing for BioJS to implement some form of communication or API. And this feature viewer, I happen to know, has a really nice events infrastructure. So I'll just go and access that one. And then I say, OK, feature viewer, give me get dispatcher. That means as much as saying, give me your call center. And if something happens, execute this function, please. And what I want to happen is I want the instance to be ready. So, excuse me, on ready, execute this function. And what we want to do is we want to create a sequence viewer. So we'll go sequence viewer instance is a new sequence viewer instance. And this also needs some options to work. In this case, a sequence. So because we have this ready event, we now know that the feature viewer is actually ready. So we can just access it and say feature viewer instance, give me a sequence, and that'll work. One more thing we need to do, we need to tell the sequence viewer where to go, so in which element to sit. That works a little bit different on that one. In this case, we call the render function of the sequence viewer instance and give it a HTML object again. But in this case, the sequence viewer will get it itself. So we can only give it a name. We'll just give it hashtag.sequence because this is, again, a CSS selector. Get the element with the ID sequence, and the sequence viewer instance will do that by itself. Right, so let's go back and run this one. And there we go. It already works. I don't know, we're pretty close on time now. One more thing I'm going to do, because this seems a bit out of shape. I'm going to change some of the options for the sequence viewer, so they're sort of the same width, both of these components. And for that, I'm going to give the render function some more options. And because the way that JavaScript works, your functions, you don't always need to specify all the input for your functions. So it sometimes works if you just do the first one. But if you want, you can add a second one. And that's an options object. So if I remember correctly, that should be cars per line equals 100. I'm going to save that and run it. And there you go. So I could go a little bit more fancy now. I don't know how long it takes. There will be pizza shortly. So one more thing I could do is I could say, use the events again, that when I click a feature on the top one that I find interesting, it will get highlighted on the sequence below. That works really easily as well. So I can just click around, and anytime I click something interesting, you'll see it highlighted below here. But I'm not sure if we have the time to do it. Maybe I'll just start, if you like, and as soon as the pizza is here, someone can yell, and then we can all run out. Maybe, or just wait directly for pizza, I don't know. Right. We're going to do it a bit differently. I already have the finished version lying around somewhere. I'm going to show you and go through that, if I could find it. Here it is. So this is the same code as before. So this is what we had before. And now what I could do, I could, again, go into the call center of my feature viewer, say, if a feature has been selected, highlight or select this area in my sequence viewer. And I'm just going to replace that on my other file. Hello? And then you can see how it works. I hope. Let me just check. There we go. So if I click in something here, you can see it gets highlighted below. And there's a little bit of trickery with some indexes necessary here, because the features viewer counts from 0 and the other one from 1, and it's just little bits and pieces you always have to kind of get around if you're doing software. But it's really easy to work with these BioJS components and put them together and create something nice in just a couple of lines. What is that? 27 lines of code. And you just have this out-of-the-box functionality. So with that, I'd like to conclude for today. Thank you very much for coming around. If you have any questions or anything, just come up to us and ask us. I need to thank Tatjana very much for organizing this whole thing and for flying us out to do this, and it's been amazing. It's been so much fun. And Jessica as well for doing all of that, all of the work on the website and everything, and all of you guys for coming and you guys for mentoring. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.